Welcome this evening. Can anyone hear us out there?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you all for showing up. We're gonna get started based on the roads and maybe we can get out of here a little earlier. So the first thing that we wanted to do was talk about minutes. Any additions, deletions, corrections? If not, could I have a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes as.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Jeannie, thanks for such great minutes that you always do. The second topic about next meeting already scheduled. The first one I think is very important. The select board is having a meeting the day after Martin Luther King. And they're going to be discussing Brown's Court. I think it's very important that our committee be there. So if everyone could put that on their agendas, that would be great. The meeting starts at 7. The agenda will come out at least 3 days prior. So if everyone could check out that and be there to support Kendra as she runs or is, is there for our committee. I'm out of the country. I apologize. But Kendra and the rest of the committee members will be there. The next meeting that we have scheduled is, and Kendra will be running those, is Tuesday, January 23rd. And it'll be Tuesday, January 30th. Kendra, you want to talk just briefly about what the 23rd would be?
So we basically shifted everything around, and so it'll probably be kind of compiling the plans for what we want to do at Brown's Court, compiling all the quotes that relate to that. I'll have put together kind of a rough budget of our total expenditures if we do, we'll say, everything that we're looking at. Obviously, that's not gonna be what we decide on, but it gives us a total number and numbers to work on. So that'll be what we mainly focus on that Tuesday, the 23rd, is kind of putting the pieces together for especially Brown's Court. And we need to have all the numbers in general to make decisions about Brown's Court. So that'll be the main focus. And then anything that we want to be bringing to the select board at that point for any approvals for the projects proposed there.
So tonight's meeting, thank you, Kendra. Tonight's meeting, we're going to get right in to Brown's.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Jeannie, can you not hear me? I'm in the room with everybody. I just don't have my camera on my computer itself on. I'm in the same room as everybody else. Can you hear me here?
I see Kendra's screen, but don't have it already. I'm sorry.
Okay.
John has audio. Martha has audio. Anything I unmute? Janet, can you hear us as well?
Okay.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Okay, so tonight, the gentleman that we hired, Chris Hagerty from Button Surveyors Incorporated, or sorry, whatever your legal business name is, has done most of his work. He's been at the town center. He's been at Brown's Court. And he has some findings to share with us. I have not seen these until today, an email I received. So I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, Chris. So if you could just let us know what you found, what you think, that'd be great.
Do you want to try sharing that PDF? There it is. Can you rotate counterclockwise by any chance? Or couple times.
So this one?
Yeah, perfect. Nice. Okay.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Okay, so let me preface this with, we are very much up to our eyeballs in this right now. We are going through pretty historic research, analyzing the evidence. We don't have any fully drawn conclusions at this point. And I would offer that I'd take this opportunity for everybody that's joining in on this meeting, if they have any colloquial knowledge some of which I've already gathered from abutters. To please feel free to share any information you've got with me. Now, where we're at, we have the research of this pretty much back to the early 1900s and its origins. And so we have, I guess, I kind of see this as kind of like three parts, right? Well, we have the east line that abuts the lots on Jericho Road, south line abuts the lots on Brown's Court, and then the westerly and northerly line that abuts the McCarthy 12-acre ravine lot. So starting with, so let's start with the Brown's Court common boundary there. Still iffy that we experienced subdivision is kind of a nightmare. A lot of the way, this is the copy of the survey here, a lot of it was laid out. When is this? 1947 subdivisions. At the time, the fields were there. Right? A lot of from this, they have parts of lots from this. So, and very little monumentation was ever set. So we need to return to there now that we found some of the stuff. We have to go return and revisit some of these corners and search in some logical spots. That being said, why don't I just do a quick chronology here based on what we found is, we know in 1905, there was survey work being done around this. It was called Gleason's pasture at the time. A surveyor by the name of Edward Hildreth ran the boundary along the top of bank. And in 1906, the McCarthy parcel, the 12-acre ravine parcel, was created, largely hinging on that same description. That's the origins kind of the northerly and westerly boundary. That's why it's weird looking. It largely follows the top of bank. That jog there on the southerly line, that angle point is we think trying to accommodate a particular boundary. So that's 1906. The McCarthy description shows up 1911. The ball field is first laid out, and largely agrees with that same description. We know there are a couple other minor adjustments, but I'm going to stick with the 1911 as being the key date that that lot was conveyed from the underwear factory to Theodore Bresser. And then so that ball field sits there, its access being Brown's Court, which was also referred to as the Athletic Road or Athletic Parkway. And everything's honky-dory. Then 1947, they start laying out the rest of the subdivision. So basically starting at the southwest corner of the lots, the bend in the road, right? The bend in Brown's Court Road and everything south there, that gets laid out in 1947. Those lots get piecemealed out. And they abut the athletic field. So the athletic field was there at the time. So that's where we're really trying to hash it out. Right at the bend in the road, that's another item I'm really digging into right now, is what is the access for this lot, for the athletic fields? Does it even have frontage on Brown's Court? That's to be determined.
Are you saying it could be land?
Yeah, Jim's parcel, he's probably aware of it. Yeah, your description calls for, not a perfect description, but a triangular description that's to the east of you that goes to the road. So we're working on that. What I suspect that's true. The question is there a gap between your parcel and the original and the southwest corner of the Jericho Road parcel?
We're both interested in.
Okay, okay, all right. So we're getting there. So working on that. Now, working to the north and west around the top of bank, that was revisited almost exactly to the day, 100 years later in 2006. Lamro and Dickinson does a survey for McCarthy, largely focusing on their parcels on Burnett, doing a small boundary line adjustment up there. In the course of that survey, Jason DiTilio, the surveyor at the time, retraces that boundary and does the best that he can with these 100-year-old descriptions, calling for things that aren't there anymore, and does his best to kind of fit. You know, it's descriptive, it's bearings and distances along that top of bank, but the monuments that it calls for are no longer there. There's sporadic evidence of fence line that he held as probably the best evidence of where that description kind of wiggled on the ground. And he puts on there on a note, And he says, this boundary closely represents a description located in volume 15, page 103. That is the McCarthy description from 1906. A boundary line agreement between the McCarthys and the town of Richmond has been proposed. The parties should exchange quitclaim deeds to line F through G, which is essentially that entire boundary, as shown on this plan to confirm this line. And I would agree with that. Now, would I differ at all with what he shows on this boundary? But that is also shown in red. The orange is his retracement survey. So, yeah, probably. He called for monuments that he was going to set on that line. They were never set. We did not find, nor did Linda, any evidence of that quitclaim between the town of Richmond and McCarthy being done. Which honestly isn't totally surprising. Like, they're trying to do an adjustment to increase the lot size of their lot on Burnett Court. And do you really want to drag that out for 6 months with a town related issue to validate a boundary? So here we are. I would largely agree with what he's got. I think I haven't spoken with the McCarthys. I do not know if that was an amicable solution at the time. Assuming it is, that would be an option that I would suggest the town picks up where they left off in 2006 and executes some kind of a boundary line agreement / quitclaim deeds, whatever you want to call it, to validate that boundary. The reason being, it is a little wishy-washy. You know, these are chains and links measured in 1906 along the top of bank that is changing, and a lot of the items it calls for, posts, stakes, whatever, are all gone. So that was never done. That's one thing. So the working draft here is operating off of the Lamro and Dickinson 2006 survey. We are tied in with other markers from other survey work to lay that on the ground. Moving on to the easterly boundary, a little more cut and dry. That was largely retraced in 2002 by Terry Harris, doing boundary survey work there. Not long before he sets foot on site, the town comes in and rips out an old historic boundary fence that was along that boundary. He interviews the town employees and does the best he can to figure out where that fence was, because one of those volume 16 deeds that make up these deed references for the ball field was a quitclaim deed between Constantine and the trustees of the Richmond ball field to validate that boundary. I haven't decided yet where the boundary was before. I suspect the original boundary was east of there. And they erected this fence. I think it was kind of shooting the town in the foot, but like I said, I'm still getting intimate with this, but I suspect that boundary was moved to the west to honor that fence, and that's what Terry Harris did there. Those black dots along that easterly boundary are markers that we found that were consistent with that survey. We think because of that, there's a third, what you'll see on all these surveys, including our worksheet, are 3 key deed references that make up the bulk of the ball field. One is that fence line. One is the original parcel conveyed to Theodore Bressor from the underwear factory. The third is down at the southeast corner of our parcel, in the vicinity of our gravel parking lot, east of the red line. And I suspect impacting a lot that was there in the early 1900s that fronted on Jericho Road. There was a 200 feet long by 50-foot wide sliver that paralleled that whole easterly boundary, that I think they realized there were issues and they cleaned it up within days after that conveyance to execute that boundary line that followed the historic fence. So the reason that's important is because that would have not only disagreed with the Terry Harris plat, but it also would have made an argument that there may be more road frontage of this parcel on Brown's Court than I'm finding so far. But I think that ship has sailed. I think that the boundary that we show there supersedes the previous conveyance of any land to the east that would have gained maybe 50 feet of frontage to be contiguous with this parcel. So I think largely the red line all the way around is pretty much what you're working with. There's more stuff to look for. So to the untrained eye, it probably won't change a whole lot. But the resulting acreage, at this point, what did I say? Was 3.15-ish acres. Again, that's subject to change. We need to hash out the frontage on Brown's Court. And that is also contingent upon validating the boundary with McCarthy. So.
Chris, just so that you know, and the committee, when I was notifying all the, help me with that road. Burnett Court, when I was notifying the residents of Burnett Court, what we were trying to do and encouraging them to come to meetings and join us, I had a long conversation with Linda McCarthy. Her husband has passed, and they had the survey that you'd referenced done together. He has since passed, and we were on the phone for quite a while, and she was, great to talk with, but she's older. She said that her son is helping her with a lot of stuff now. And she was gonna talk with him about it. I've not seen Linda at any of our meetings and or her son, but they have been informed of what's going on, and she made sure to reference that it had been done, that nothing had been signed with the town.
Good.
But she wasn't, angry. She appreciated, the heads up.
Good. So that tells me she's operating off of the same boundaries that we are.
Exactly.
So there's no surprises there. But in the absence of executing something like that, it's kind of wishy-washy. This is why Jason suggested that. It's just a boundary depicted on a surveyed opinion. It's not legally binding. So when we want to talk about the potential for development or the potential or proposed setbacks or any of that stuff, it's really fluff right now until that gets sorted out. And that's not to say that we might not run into the same thing with Brown's Court. Like we could find, so the problem with the Brown's Court stuff is that it's a pretty hokey plat with pretty minimal distances. Some are penciled in, some are absent altogether. The evidence that we found out there conflicts definitively with that record plat, even though some of these are lots plus half lots. The depth, I've got some history of the fence that they share in common with the ball field, which is apparently erected by a softball league at the time. That we may run into the same thing there. It's the surveyor's job to advise their client about inconsistencies and not to give you the legal remedies, but to suggest that. And that's what Jason was doing with his, is that if these lots on Brown's Court are supposed to be 270 feet deep and we're finding evidence that puts it at 300, maybe we should clean that up, and you guys agree to a particular boundary. In some cases, that's absolutely necessary because there's a profound lack of evidence. In other cases, it's the easiest way to remedy an issue. So the other thing that has come up in this is how the heck is this a town property? When it was conveyed out, in 1905 to Theodore Bressor, the bulk of the property, subsequent add-ons and additions were done with an association. And I think what we found is that it goes from, we do have at some point, and this could be buried in the select board minutes from the early 90s or even mid 1900s. That goes to, Bressor's conveyance does end up going to, so let's talk about the bulk of the ball field. It ends up going to the Richmond Baseball Association. Charland, who owned the corner lot that fronted on Jericho when they did that adjustment off the east end, that I think is invalid now because of the fence line they agreed to. That was to the Richmond Baseball Association. And then Charland conveys I'm definitely, this is why I said this research, I'm not sure that I had the exact deed for where Charlene got possession of the ball field itself, but it does eventually go to trustees of the village of Richmond. Not trustees of the ball field, but the village of Richmond, so. I would probably argue that's a municipal entity and not a private association with Secretary of State.
Was that from Constantine?
Constantine went to Richmond Baseball Association, but that was simply the boundary agreement on the east end of our property. That was the only one that had the reversionary language, right? So it said in case the land hereby conveyed ceases at any time to be used as a recreation field, and the said fence becomes the sole property of Constantine. So
it wasn't the ball field, it was just.
no, it's just a boundary line agreement as we're showing here, that's all that was, and it was to the trustees of the ball, I mean. I bet you would find that there's a dissolution or or maybe not, of the ball field association, and it becomes a village of Richmond.
So you actually
Entity.
have a document that says the trustees of Richmond Village?
Yeah, the bulk of the property, so volume 16, page 96, that's Charlene to trustees of the village of Richmond, and the trustees at the time were Samuel Bishaw, F.H. Shepherdson, and J. Culligan of Richmond, trustees of the village of Richmond and their successors. So yeah, that's conveying all the same land that was conveyed to Theodore Bresser, which was that original 1905, if you chase this back, original 1905 conveyance from the underwear factory. So
Now,
the bulk of it lies with the trustees of the village.
do you mind if we open it for questions?
No,
I have
please
one
do.
quick one. I know there may be some questions about the Carroll Oliver land with the entrance.
Mhm.
What happened with the rest of the neighbors? I mean, did they come out? Did they say this is my boundary line? Did you have any interaction with the residents?
Cheryl Wolcott
Yeah,
came
yeah,
out
yeah,
and was gave us kind of that history of that old fence
Yeah.
that serves as somewhere in the vicinity of the boundary, but wasn't able to offer a whole lot. And then Jim came out, that was the extent of
the neighbors.
Yeah,
Cause when we went up to meet with the parking committee, the three of us met with the parking committee and all the neighborhood up there and, the people on the right were quite concerned about their boundary line, but that looks like the cleanest one there is.
it is definitively the cleanest one there is,
Yeah.
surveyed in 2002 by a reputable surveyor who took into account the right information and monumented it. Like there are markers to perpetuate what he came up with, so.
Does the committee members have any questions?
No, well, yeah, what is the process to sort of make all this definitive
Mhm.
so that going forward, we can say this is the boundary.
So we just need a little bit more time, fill in the gaps with our research, make sure we have, solid research back to creation on all of these. Which we're close to, but there's just some holes that happens. And then once we have a good working survey plat to operate off of, that red line now gets labeled with bearings and distances all the way around. We could monument it or flag it, so that folks can see where this is in space. And we get, the town attorney involved to offer legal advice on how they would propose to clean up or execute the legal agreement. So
would you be there, Fran, that was a great question. Would you be there with McCarthy's surveyor Lamro and yourself with our town attorney? And hopefully come up with a quick claim agreement?
yeah, I mean, probably our involvement would be showing folks where the heck this is in the field. Like,
Yeah.
it's one thing to see it on a map, but I mean, I was trying to kind of flag up where these things were, but we just weren't finding anything.
Yeah,
So we kind of zipped right along in the interest of time, but, B, we could write up a legal description of the line to be, agreed to. That's something we do. We could discussed this with the McCarthys that we're operating off of. I mean, we're completely objective in this whole thing. I got no
Mhm.
doubt
Oh, yeah.
in this fight, so, we're working off a solid survey. Larimer and Dickinson is no longer, they were absorbed by Trudell Consulting Engineers. And the surveyor that did this doesn't work, works for SD Ireland now, so. So if they're trusting in that I've come up with the exact same boundary, then we can just move on with that. But ultimately, it's the attorney's decision of what kind of legal instrument it's gonna take to clean that up and what kind of language they wanna introduce into it, so.
What about like the neighbors on Brown's Court? Do they have, what is their say?
We're not at a point yet, like, it could go either way. It could be a rat's nest, and we need to involve them in these discussions in terms of coming up with an amicable solution, amicable boundary. Or, you know, as it happens in the survey world, I think it is happening on the easterly boundary. Everything adds up. There are no conflicts to report. And I'm not bound to really suggest anything other than we're going to plat it. It's gonna be on a map and it's gonna be the operating boundary. So, so in that case, I think that's a perfect example of what, you know, maybe 75% of surveys happen, that you never even knew the surveyor was there. They came in, they made the measurements, they drew up a map, and you might not have even known. In some cases, you're playing judge and jury for that, but in cases where you're uncovering conflicts between physical evidence, occupational boundaries, record descriptions, yeah, I mean, that's just based on experience, and if we feel the need that it's a survey problem that really can't be solved, then we would ask that they participate in some kind of agreement.
But in the end, say they wanted to sell their house, they could be better off by having this survey.
There's a benefit, for sure, there's a benefit. Mhm.
Because they would truly know what they're.
They would.
about.
It would, not to say definitively, like, what I don't wanna open up a can of worms here is, I mean, it all has to do with, ultimately, a lot of these folks are gonna get surveyed as a result of our work anyways. But if I'm uncovering a fact that a garage is too close to the sideline, and that sideline starting at Brown's Court and it comes up to your boundary, I don't wanna make a mountain out of a molehill here. I'm using that to defend my conclusion on your common boundary between the town and them, not create or divulge other issues I find along the way, that there's a non-conformance with a garage or something to that effect. So anyways,
Chris, I'd like to introduce you to Jay Fur, who is our chair of our select board.
I did.
And Jay, do you have any questions? I mean,
No, I suspected that I'm not a surveyor. I suspected that there would be issues where the rock that's laying to this corner is not there anymore and all that. That's just human that everything.
Everywhere. Mhm.
And I do agree that, you know, when it comes time to sell your property and people are doing title searches and proving that you actually own the land you own, having a nice defined agreed on borderline is to everybody to manage. And I would hope that in order to achieve that, if the town needs to do a series of planning agreements to say, we agree, it's not here, I mean, that's everybody's advantage. I would hope the landowners we'd be doing it with would agree.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's flexibility there too, right? Like, I've done plenty of these where the path of least resistance was to be accommodating, and that was the way to handle it. In other cases, it goes to court and it's not so pretty, but, yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a benefit. You know, just to throw it out there, you know, I know we're trying to move along quickly with this, and we can move along quickly with suggested boundaries once all the evidence is uncovered, which we're not quite there yet. But that's when things can move slow as molasses, because now we've got the town involved in the town's legal counsel. We have neighbors involved in their legal counsel. We have the potential for mortgages, right? So if there are mortgages, And if we need to bring somebody into the discussion and execute some kind of quitclaim because there is ambiguity in their boundary, and the best way to sort that out is to execute some kind of agreement. If there's a mortgage on the property, the bank sees that as a modification of what they hold the papers on. I just ran into one today that it was super simple, an equitable boundary swap, and the bank comes back. It took 8 months to trace down the mortgage to get a partial release on it. Then the bank comes back and says, we want the whole property surveyed in its entirety, because it's not just this little triangle you're moving to accommodate this garage. You are effectively changing the whole 4 acres that goes with that. And so now we have to survey the rest of it. So there's just these little things that people should be aware of that can just drag out the timeline on these things.
Which means you don't put a shovel into anything until.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Would you mind taking more questions? There's somebody's
Absolutely.
hand
Go
up, and
for it.
we're gonna open it up for everybody who's here tonight. Mary Claire, I saw your hand first.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to clarify, because I kind of snuck in here late, that the border or the boundary lines that you have issues with are the southern part and the area surrounding the McCarthy area, right? The eastern part, all fine, nice and well done. It's everything else.
That's correct. Yeah, the easterly abutters, those 3 or 4 there, that's the clearest stuff we've got to operate off of. Everything else, not super clear yet.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I have a
Okay, let's
question.
say your name. for the
I'm Lane
record.
Marshall, Chris.
Hey, Lane,
How are you?
I'm good.
Just a quick question, the 3.15 acres that you show, that's all within the red line.
That's correct.
Can you, and I won't hold you to it.
Yeah.
Can you give me an estimate of what you think the open land is
That's a
that would
good
be
question.
available for development if they decided to do it?
That's a great question.
Great question.
I mean, it seems to me that we're looking at 2.5 acres or whatever the case may be.
It's probably more like that, although, I mentioned that I suspected the original survey work in the early 1900s was following top of bank. I think that's moved, and looking at some of those red angle points, those aren't on top of bank. That's
Right.
down over almost halfway down the bank. So if you took that out, so assuming steep slopes are out, setbacks and so on, yeah, probably is. I would subtract out at least half an acre, probably. Yeah, and I haven't, we're solely focused on the boundary right now. I have not looked at any other development components such as access, right of ways, other encumbrances. I will divulge, the various paths and accesses that we found that are probably, if they're not of record, they probably have ripened into record as accesses, especially up in the northeast corner there.
You're talking about the one that cuts across from the
Yeah,
school?
yeah, exactly,
That's
like
quite a
it's
path.
used, right? So things like that, but I haven't looked at, density, setbacks, wetland buffers, there's definitively wetlands in the northeast corner, the buffer of which would impact this lot. So what you're left over with that, maybe even less than that.
Any other questions? In or out? Zoom or in the room?
Was there something in the chat?
It was pointing out the hand raised.
Awesome. Anybody here at the committee have any other questions? You've given us a lot to think about.
We'll keep plugging away.
Do you
Got
have
some good advice for you.
any idea when maybe? We might hear from you again.
Next week, end of next week, something like that.
Awesome.
We'll get into the land records again. Maybe by the end of this week, then early into next week, and I do have some stuff, now that we've found some random stuff that we
Do you
aren't
want me to
entirely.
those for your meeting on Tuesday?
It'll be fine.
Want us to leave these paper copies?
Yeah,
Yep,
so that
sure.
the select board can look at them as well.
Absolutely.
So is it the same, the 2 copies the same?
One's with the photo in the background, the other is not, and I just wrote for myself a little timeline.
to the electronic stuff, which probably fine. The drawback about paper is we can't
Perfect.
walk up to the camera and hold it.
Share it, right,
Yeah, so
right.
we'll do electronic, we'll make sure that that's there, awesome.
Do we need
Why don't we
to-
just leave this for, why don't we just leave this for the committee?
Okay, that's
That's
awesome,
with that.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a way without, you know, I really liked Lane's question about how much land. Is there a concise way to get what is in the ravine and what,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
okay, if we could get that information, that would be
yeah.
great.
Sure, sure.
Any other things we might need?
Well, York, has already mentioned setbacks, so.
Right. So, just help me with the definition of a setback. When you say setbacks, what are you talking about?
Just if it, you know, the closest you can build to a property line based on this zoning district.
Okay, perfect.
Now, I
Awesome.
mean, that's one thing in a PUD or PRD type development, those are kind of thrown out the window and those are subject to negotiation, but
Okay.
with the DRB, but yeah, I mean, it's something to consider here. Where's the lot frontage? I'm not really sure. What's the sideline? What's the rear line? Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone through the development regs of the fine tooth comb, but what other, so maybe that's something John and I can work on too.
Okay.
Kind of have a working
Just
perimeter.
so
to
that
work
you
with.
know, he's sharing his files with John Linn, so that John can keep updating, feed for us to know. So we appreciate it.
On question return.
Oh,
Ellen too. Yeah, he'll be involved soon enough.
okay, before we let Chris go, any other questions at all?
One quick question.
Sure.
Jim Oliver, property owner. Is it possible to get a copy of that image that's?
Can we email it to you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got it, right? So.
Yeah, I've got it, I can email it to you.
Yeah, we'll be putting it, well, actually, it can be put in the document.
In the
archive.
minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah, on
When they,
on
when they
the
post
website.
them, they post them as
Right,
attachments.
also documents that are shared in the meeting, Duncan can say, if you go to this committee's page of the site.
Oh, I'm
look
gonna
at
dump
them,
that to the, yeah.
And it's either as part of this meeting's discussion, along with the minutes.
and just so you know, Jim, like, you're gonna see, this is a survey worksheet, so you are gonna see little points at each thing we located with a description, elevation, point number, like it's rough.
I understand.
And it's- Yeah, it's pretty rough, but you can see all the stuff that we have field located.
Thank you so much
Yeah,
for getting
of
us
course.
there so quickly for
Of
us.
course,
We really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Cool.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you so much. And you'll
All right.
be in touch with John, just to touch base with John.
Well, yep,
Okay, great.
given what I've got so far too.
All right, so next on the agenda, we have Lewis White, and I'm sorry, I forgot the guest name again,
Tanner.
Tanner. And, we heard you're an expert in bocce, somebody.
Right.
So Tess, I'm gonna let you take over this part if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, there are a series of events that we managed to make contact. I was calling, Oak Ledge, I called Burlington Recreation Department. They referred me to you, they referred me to a couple of other people. And I've spoken to Lewis a few times and he seems to know a lot about the construction. I did some research on the construction. Once I saw things like drainage and some people had cement boundaries, I said, I'm over my head. And so that's where I'm calling on you for your expertise. And sadly, as little as I know about the construction of a bocce court, I know even less about the game itself.
So if you, and we don't need to rush you, but just because we all have places to drive and the weather out there, and before we lose power, or hopefully we won't, but before we do, we're gonna try to just speed it up a little bit. So if you could introduce yourself, tell us how you are involved with bocce, so we can just have it for the record.
Okay, my name's Lou White, and I'm with the Burlington Bocce Club. Right now I'm the caretaker of the courts. So I do the maintenance on and other things, and repairs and stuff like that. And,
Still a resident of Richmond?
Yes.
Yes, I thought you lived here,
Yeah, I live up on Richmond Huntington Road.
right?
And basically I have a construction background, so I can draw plans or some stuff like that and, tell you some of the things that I think that they made mistakes with there and we would want to do again,
Okay.
So could you give us, a brief overview of what it would take to build a bocce?
Well, roughly your bocce ball courts are, 80 by 12 foot. So they're 80 long and 12 foot wide. You can use, what we did at Oak Ridge, we have 2 courts that have a sister wall in it, which made it 24 feet wide, because there's a sister, so we didn't have to build another complete wall court on the other side. So that kind of worked out pretty good because it made it a lot easier to build it,
Lou, did you see our, and I don't know if you can pull it up, did you see our rough drawing based on the survey of what our vision is and where we were gonna see the yellow, that's where we had envisioned we were gonna put the bocce.
Back in there?
See right there,
Right there.
And,
Oh, yeah, okay, see now.
I think John, I can't see can you see the dimensions, what he had put in there?
I think it was smaller. It says over here, 87 by 13.1.
That's about right. Is that a single court or is that?
One,
That's
was
a
one,
double. Was it a
no,
double?
1/4.
Single court.
Oh, single court.
Single.
The other spot you can go is in the back there behind the wall field,
Yeah,
right in that area.
I would say we're still uncertain as to whether we're going to move the ball field back to this sort of original location, or as you can see it slightly here, and you can see it in the survey that the ball field is now over here, and
Oh,
so it
okay,
may go
right.
back that way, and then it may be bocce has more space there.
We're waiting for the definitive survey.
To determine, but yes, this space is still in thoughts for something if we need to this one.
Yeah.
So
There is a question. No.
what kind of material is, what do you recommend for the sideboard and whatever?
I would recommend concrete, because it's gonna be less maintenance. What we have at the Oak Ledge is wood, and every year we gotta take care of it.
Do you, how deep down into
Well,
The courts walk with concrete or,
concrete?
yeah,
concrete, it's almost like a curving thing, so you
Okay.
can go down about 24 inches. But you need 6 inches of it exposed
Right,
for playing surface. So roughly 8 inches between that and when you start doing the court, you'll have a substratus and then another one, and then you'll have your finished court on top, which is 1 inch.
and what kind of material?
It's stuff called hard true, and it's a
it's the same thing as a clay tennis court.
yeah.
Okay.
Is there a special stone that you have to get for the bocce courts?
That's what we're talking about.
That's
The certain
hard-
material
hard
is
to-
called hard true.
And so it's hard true.
Yeah, it's like powdered clay and pack it down and it becomes a solid surface.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking-
And
Looks
the,
like concrete.
yeah, and the company that I talked with or emailed with, that they said that Hartrue was their competitor. They going under the name of Northeast Fast Dry,
Did you contact Hideka? Is that who you call?
Hideka.
Yeah, that's what we use for our supply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Northeast.
I think it's Hideka
Adjourn.
And,
or Hadeka.
Yeah, I'm sure.
if that's pretty hard, when you have some of the rains we've lately, what is that?
Well, we have, at the Burlington course, we have had problems with rain for quite a while. And so we put in drainage underneath the courts that took away a lot of the drainage problem. And then what does land on the courts, we have to deal with. So we have sponges and pumps and different rollers to try to get the water off the court in those situations. But you can plan ahead and build drainage into the courts.
Did they put drainage in the center of the court? Like,
Yeah, for 3 and 4 we did.
So, that could be just holes in the side of the concrete, or are you talking about pipes?
Well, we did that in the bocce courts many years ago, but then over time, the courts settled and then the courts were about an inch above the court, so they weren't really useful anymore. So we have to, that kind of makes that hard. It's something that's movable.
Do you mind if we just hold for one question? Mary, do you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I was just curious about like the annual maintenance cost for the court and
Great question.
Sure. So, the big expense for the annual maintenance would be resurfacing the court. At the end of the year, some of the material gets, spent and falls apart, so you scrape that off and you put down a very thin, fresh layer. And for our 4 courts, that was probably, $2,000 to get the material delivered. And then the court volunteers go out there and do all the work.
perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
But that expense was not an expense that the park paid, the club pays that, like the club has, the way we do it, the club collects, dues from the members and that money goes into maintaining the course, buying the equipment and all that stuff.
How many members do you?
200, we stopped advertising about 8 years ago because we got out of control, we kept having to build more courts, we started with 2 courts, we built a third, and we replaced the first 2 with more sturdy ones. Then we tore up third and replaced it with 3 and 4. So we just keep growing and we have to actually stop promoting and advertising because it's gotten too big.
What would you say your age range for your membership is?
We have 3 leagues. One of the leagues is probably people in their 30s and 40s. The other league is people of retired age. And they, you know, we used to all play together, but once we got bigger and had to split into more leagues, it just kind of naturally split itself out that way.
Yeah.
And it works out great for everyone.
We even have some young kids playing that.
Yeah, there's 12-year-olds.
12-year-olds.
That are very, very good. That's one of the great things about bocce is anyone can play, any age, any ability
It's a
level.
good social event, you know, I mean, we meet a lot of people
And where do you store your equipment?
We built a little storage unit right next to the court, and it has a little lock on it. You punch in a code and you open it up, and it has bocce balls in there, and your pegs for scoring, and your tape measures, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just a little tiny little shed. That's all you really need.
Any questions?
So, what do you think, about the idea of having a bocce court in Richmond?
I've told 3 people about it since Lou called me. They live in Essex and they're all super excited. Like, that's closer than going to Burlington. I think it's a great idea to have it. There's plenty of other clubs around Vermont that are doing pretty well. Rutland has a pretty big club at their Italian American Association. Grand Isle has a private club with about 100 members. Waitsfield just made a new court last year, so they're getting into it. Barry has courts and Stowe has a court at one of their resorts. So there's courts around, people play. If you build it, they will come and feel the dream.
And we could count on people that want to play to help keep the court up.
Lou's right down the road, yeah. Lou's as good as it gets for this kind of stuff.
I mean, Lou, since you're here and you're in front of us, if this comes to fruition, would you be willing to come out and teach people in Richmond how to play bocce?
Sure, it's not hard, it's one of those games that takes 15 minutes to learn the rules, and a lifetime master.
And we have all the materials that you would need to run a club, all the paperwork, and we just gotta change the letterhead on the stuff, so we do this like turnkey situation.
Yeah, I don't think would want to be the club. We would want then people to come out and say, we want to start a club.
Mhm.
Someone step up and do it.
So 2 questions. One, I heard a $2,000 number. Was that the supplies to refurbish the courts? Now, is that enough for 1 year or is that for multiple years?
That was for us to do 4 courts for 1 year. So if you're doing 1 or 2 courts, you're gonna have a lower
About
cost.
$1,000 annual.
Yeah, the biggest price for us was kind of the delivery. They have to get a big delivery truck and bring it out, and it's hard to deliver it to where we are in Oak Ledge. So, you know, dealing with that is it's not that big of a deal. The club should be able to generate those.
As just a random off the wall thing, perhaps if we proceed with this, we could pool our order with you and just have delivered your location and then have somebody from our end come and pick it up.
That's a win-win. That's absolutely a great idea. And, the club, the Bocce Club in Burlington, has been doing really, really well. They have a lot of money in the bank, and I've talked to them about maybe making some of us a scholarship to help get another club started. So I could talk to them about it a little bit more if we're getting into a funding issue. Because it can be kind of expensive to build a bocce court. The last 2 courts that we did through Parks and Rec cost about $22,000 to have those 2 courts put in side by side. Plus there was some work that the club had to do afterwards to put the surfaces in. So it's not cheap to build them. That was the wood courts that we have. Concrete might be significantly cheaper. I haven't looked into what it's costing.
The price of lumber is much more expensive than concrete.
Yeah, especially now.
And my other question, this betrays that I've never played bocce in my life. Is this a sport you can do basically literally anytime there's not snow or ice? I mean, is it like an element of your sport?
Oh, yeah, we play, even in the winter, we'll go down there and stomp down the court and roll some balls sometimes.
Really like on snow?
Yeah, you're not, it doesn't, it's not, great for the perfect surface or anything like that,
That's the
but
way to keep your hand. Okay, so it really can be, especially when we don't have a lot of snow, 12 months a year there. This isn't gonna be something that we call, one question people say is this gonna be something we can only do in the summer? And it sounds like that would not be.
mostly in the summer. Like we start as soon as the courts are dry, usually in April, people start playing on the courts and we'll go until once it gets dark too early, we can't really play after work, so.
I have a question. Is it possible that maybe volunteers in Richmond could build a portion of it so it wasn't so costly? If we had volunteerism?
There's some easy ways to do that. I think if we went with a concrete structure, they would do the concrete and then the concrete walls would have to be lined with some type of wood because the balls can't hit the concrete, so.
Right.
Volunteers will be able to do all of those aspects of it,
Right.
do all the lining and, build the scoring towers and the ball racks and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Any other questions? Anybody on Zoom have questions or anybody inside?
You're all invited to come to Burlington and play bocce with us if you,
We
want
may
to
be
learn the
taking
game,
a field trip.
get a feel for it and kind of get the atmosphere. It's a nice place to be.
Now, with your base, is the base considered like a pea gravel kind of thing?
Yeah, so there's 3 levels. There's probably a photo of it right here. Yeah, you kind of see here. So there's a base, bigger gravel, and then
Yeah.
the stuff which is like a baseball infield, basically the same thing as a baseball infield. And on top of that goes the harsh root.
Okay,
Do you have a picture of that?
You can have this. I'll give you.
You sure?
another. Yeah.
Oh,
Great.
awesome.
thank you.
And do you mind if we call you as we get further down the road when we have more questions or need more help?
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't actually take the opportunity to introduce my so Tanner Petrie with the Bocce Club also. I've been with the club since 2010. I was a president for a number of years. I've since retired, but I'm still pretty involved in everything going on. And really took the club from little to grew it to pretty big. So I know a lot about little steps that we have to take to do all this stuff. So I really think I could help get this off the ground if we decide to do it.
Well, that would be awesome. That'd be great. We really appreciate both of you coming on this nasty night.
That's right.
Awesome.
Tana, could you write down your number? I have Lewis's number.
Awesome. All right, let's move on in the essence of time. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Next on our agenda is John Linn.
Hey,
Oh,
just one
sorry.
more question. Martha, I think it was the last meeting, you had a question about how difficult would it be for seniors instead of being on the lawn of using a court?
Yeah, we've done bocce on grass, on grass, and plus we did it in the hallway at Richmond Elementary School. So we're ready for anything, and I think this sort of bocce court would be great. And I think I'm curious about seniors, but I think I understood from what I heard earlier about when you have clubs, you throw it out as far as you can go, and you don't throw it. So anyway, I got that.
Well, it's easier to roll on a court than it is in the grass. The ball will keep rolling a lot farther, so it's a little bit easier on the court than it is on the grass.
Oh, great.
Plus you also have, when you have the boards up, you actually can play off the boards, bang shots, almost like playing pool,
And
There's a lot
we
of
have
different strategies you can use.
we have members who use walkers and wheelchairs, and we have a wheelchair accessible set of courts, and so they can get on and off, and they play, do great. They love it. We've had groups come that are like activity groups for people in wheelchairs. They've come and had events down there. The Special Olympics will come down and use the courts as well. I run the bocce tournament for the state of Vermont for the Special Olympics. It's like the biggest bocce event in the state, like it's huge. And so you can get those people down here playing as well. It's
That's great.
available to a lot.
How different is a handicap court opposed to a
Just
Just the gate.
Yeah,
Way to
just
get 'em
the
in.
entrance.
That's the only difference.
Wow.
So some people can use a ramp to roll the ball if they need to, like
Yeah,
bowling,
like the bowling.
but most people find a way to do it, by hand.
Awesome.
If you've ever been to some of the cities in Europe and walked around their parks, there are many bocce courts and you see, it's retired people and it's their daily activity. I mean, they're there in the morning and, you know, it's a
Yeah.
side
It's kind of an
competition.
addictive sport.
Yeah.
It really is.
The sport's a lot of fun, but then you make a lot of friends down there too. Like now I don't have all my bocce people around me. I miss them all like crazy and everyone's kind of waiting for
Just
spring to
free.
get down there and see each other again.
Oh, that's awesome. Anything you need to add, would like to add to us, or anything we haven't asked you about?
No, I have a couple things I printed out, just a couple of, like a wish list that are great for having for bocce courts. Example of our welcome letter that we give to people when they join the club, and like what it looks like to be in a club, like what a daily club member's experience is like. So I'll leave those for you guys.
Would you be the caretaker?
I will, thank you,
Sure.
thank you so much.
She's our
Thank you,
bocce and
thank you.
pickleball court expert here, but we're all learning.
Thank you.
No, it's a great game. It really is. It's a lot of fun.
Great.
This is for me too?
Yeah, you can have that too.
Oh, great.
That's,
Oh, thank you.
Just a company that makes it, they're mostly a tennis company, so they have
Okay.
mostly tennis stuff in there, but
And this is basically the same stuff that Hagerty's.
that's right, yes.
When I contacted Burlington Recreation, that they said that at some point that they used Churchill Landscaping.
They were the first, yeah, they did our renovations of courts 1 and 2.
Okay.
And we had another company after that built 3 and 4.
Okay.
I have their name at home. I can't think of it right now.
Was it Maple?
Maple, yeah.
Maple.
Maple something.
Okay.
And what you're really looking for, if you're doing a wood one, probably even with a concrete one, but is a patio builder, like the skills for building a patio
Mhm.
is the same thing as a bocce court. You gotta get it flat and level and, you know, set your board straight, so. that's the
Any
skill set
recommendations on what's the best,
For,
the bocce court?
Material,
Or the company, or, I mean, that you have,
If
that
we
has had
decide-
good luck with? Or
They were-
putting
they
you
were-
on the spot?
they were both fine. We had more problems with, the first company, I can't remember the name again.
Churchill?
We had more problems with Churchill. We had to have them come back and fix a bunch of things,
Mhm.
but, it wasn't a big thing, like screws weren't put it all the way. It wasn't like they
Okay.
screwed up,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
walls were all wonky. It was just little stuff,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I did, kind of put one of those things out to bid and see.
I think Maples and Colchester and
Yeah.
Churchill's and Charlotte, I wanna say.
Awesome. Great, well, we will definitely be in touch to get more information after we go through this.
So you got a lot to go through.
Thanks again for coming. We really
Thank you.
appreciate your
Thank
help.
you.
No problem.
Thank you. And please drive safe.
Yeah, slow and steady.
Yes, all right, we're moving on. John, are you with us still?
Yep, still here.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you saw what Chris had to present. Any thoughts on what he has presented regarding Brown's Court?
Not really. I mean, it's still kind of too soon to tell until we get the top of bank or the setbacks annotated before we can really start to throw hard lines on the paper.
Okay, do you need anything from this committee to help you? Did you get the new dimensions on the bocce court?
Yeah, the 12 by 80. I've got that, and I'm sure as we get closer and things get nailed down, we'll want to know like the space around it and things like that. Really
So
getting
we
all
have
that
these two
will be helpful.
gentlemen's contact information now, and we can put you
Perfect.
direct touch. John Linn is the gentleman who's drew the plans.
Hi, John.
He's an architect here in Richmond. So he's been helping us with designing the field, how it would look on the layout. So we're trying to keep everybody, all the experts together, and you're our bocce experts.
All right, fantastic.
So John, nothing you need from us, and did it help at all with the presentation by Chris?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great start. I didn't chime in because I don't want to rush him. He's doing awesome work, and until he can get to the point that he can feed me something more concrete, I'll be patient.
Okay, I think Fran has a question for you, John.
Sure.
John, On your plan, could you just give me roughly what the dimensions would be for the parking area?
Oh, that's right.
Let me pull it up here. I'll take a second.
Yeah, I just have someone who wants to give us a quote, and then he was looking for about the rough dimensions.
Sure. Yeah, I saw something floating around from Johnny Scott.
Okay, so I sent, and I apologize, I sent Spence your way for dimensions, and I sent Johnny Scott, and Johnny Scott and I went to the site, and we showed him what we needed. Jay Fur helped us this evening, John, to look it up with the ADA, because we want at least one handicap parking lot, one parking space. And Jay said that we only need one if we keep it under 25.
24.
Yep.
24. Is that true?
Well, yeah, if you have 25, one of them has to be a handicap.
Right.
But
So,
every time you take over to like 26, 51, 76, you need another.
okay. So did you hear that?
Yep.
The van accessible spot, the van spot.
Yeah, the van accessible spot. So,
Right. I mean, I assume with a gravel lot, there's
It
not
is.
any painted lines or anything. So as long as we have a sign that is centered on that space, it would be adequate.
right. Did I send you the post on the parking lot?
Fran, what I'm showing right now, not including the driveway access,
Right.
is roughly a rectangle that is 63 by, I'm going to call it 102.
Okay. I think that's all we need now, is just to give people a rough idea of
Sure.
what area they'd be working with. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yep. Of course.
So John, did I send you the look of the post that we were thinking about?
I saw
Or
a photo by Mike. Yeah, I didn't see.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what that was about. I just saw the post.
So he saw a post behind Camel's Hump, and to divide the parking lot so that people don't go forward or, into each other. And they
Gotcha.
are using that up at Camel's Hump, and I apologize, I don't have it for a picture. It's on my phone and I forgot to send it. I apologize, but it's a post with like plastic linkage between each post, and the bottom is concrete. So somebody can't go in and pick one up and move it, but a tractor can. So say we do this parking lot and something happens, they're removable. Or if we decide down the road, we need more handicap or something, so they're movable. So it was just an option. And John, you may have more options or ideas, but something to differentiate from going forward.
Makes sense. Keep people off the lawn.
Exactly. And I'll get that to you, and I apologize. Let me make myself a note. Send pic. All right, anything else that you can think of that we could help you, John, or any suggestions?
Not right now. I think I'm good. I'm excited to get cranking with the stuff from Chris, but like I said, I'll be patient.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for touching base. Anybody have any questions for John before we leave? Okay, perfect. All right, summary of action items needing completion to be able to bring a proposal to the select board for the park.
We're gonna, I think, want that for next meeting when we have more of a survey, right?
Okay, just FYI, my water fountain is, I got help today from Red Wolf Construction, $4,000. So it's a water, well, we can change it, but, I got a recommendation today. We had thought about a nice water fountain at Brown's Court. So the bottom would be to fill dog dishes or cat dishes. The middle would be for people to actually drink from a water fountain. And then there was another spigot to the side to fill water bottles. So the ones that the construction company uses on their projects, he sent to me, and they run around $4,000. I'm sure we could find a cheaper one, but he sent that to me this morning. And they run about 4,000, so we could put that on a list of expenses.
So I have
okay.
something.
Okay.
So I had, I think I sent it to Kendra, but I had looked up several other things that we had talked about at the last meeting. Like, a wooden storage shed, some benches, some seats, a bike rack, a trash can. Those were the other amenities that we mentioned. So,
Right.
so I'm not sure how, I really just, these are true estimates. I just didn't know what we want to go with. But maybe we would want to put an 8x8 storage shed or an 8x10 storage shed.
Jeannie, can I interrupt you just for a
Yes.
sec?
Yep.
Are you thinking brand new or just renovating and rehabbing the one that's there?
That one that there, you mentioned that sign, that's been there for at least 4 years on that thing.
Oh my
on
God.
that shed. And that's a shed that I'm not sure that it's worth. I think that's the baseball. So I was thinking of one, we had talked last time about something small over by the tennis and pickleball courts, because if it ends up being a joint or what we call a multi-use court, we'll need a place to store the nets and the course maintenance material, broom, shovels, whatever it might be, and then the bocce balls and the bocce things that we need to for that. So I don't know. That other shed is over on the total other side of the field, and it's really. So I just looked up the prices of sheds. I mean, do you want me to, Kendra, did you get that?
Wasn't able to open it.
Okay. Okay.
But
So
if you can send it to me again, and that'll be added, all those numbers to the budget for next meeting on the 23rd.
okay, I can do
So
that.
everybody's watching. What we're trying to do is getting a solid number for renovations and upgrades to Brown's Court. So we can have, pretty solid numbers. And Jeannie was just doing a list of all those things that may be needed at Brown's Court. I mean, there's a trash can up there now, but would a nicer trash can / recycle bin be better?
Yeah, so then I think we would need a discussion about benches. 2 benches, 4 benches, would we want them on slabs? The 4 benches, I estimate, would be about $6,000, give or take, just from some things that I looked up. And then we also talked about possibly a table with some seating around it, maybe a table with 3 seats and an open side for a wheelchair or somebody's own chair. And that would be about $5,000. A bike rack, it would be in the range, but I'm saying like $1,250 for a bike rack. And then the trash cans, I wasn't sure about in town, if there's if town has a place where we get trash cans, but the ones like the one that is at Volunteer Green, it would be about $380. So with just a rough estimate of the shed of maybe $5,000. I didn't get quotes. I only looked at kits from Lowe's just for a rough idea. I mean, I'm sure we could have someone build one for less, but the kit that didn't include even shingles or paint, I'm guessing a shed would be around $5,000. So that's the amenities that I totaled up. Leaving a space for your fountain yet, Denise, was almost $18,000 just for a shed.
Are the benches like what we have at Volunteers Green and the all around church? Were the benches like we have at all around church and Volunteers Green?
The benches that we have at the round church are over $2,000. Those are like the top of the line benches from what I looked at. The benches I saw range from $8,000 to $1,500, but the one that we got at Volunteers Green was just a minute, I have it right here. That Volunteers Green, $2,132 to get a similar bench that we have there. That style and that material. So Yeah, I was shocked.
Yeah, you and me both. I was shocked when he told me how much that water fountain was today. Jay,
The benches, are we talking benches for spectators who watch softball, or benches just to sit and enjoy?
like,
Over near the pickleball court.
pickleball court,
Like, near-
after they walk their dog.
Yeah,
So one question, and this is by no means a requirement, this is not like we're saying you must have these, but with bleachers. People have asked for bleachers down Volunteers Green for a long time, but we can't even put those up there. But if we could hit, I gotta think there's an Eagle Scout out there with the project that he's doing.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I can't quite hear you.
he's talking
I can't
about
quite hear Jay.
bleachers, he's talking about bleachers, and that's been something asked for at Volunteers Green a lot. And so, potentially there's an Eagle Scout who has a project they're looking to do, that's what he has said.
Right, and I'm just thinking, the way to save money, Eagle Scouts have to do projects to get their Eagle Scout, and we've got a young gentleman who wants to do a project to build an American flag drop off.
Oh, yeah,
Which
that's
is an
right.
interesting idea, but we're kind of wondering, well, who would maintain that and all that, and if we were to say to him, build some bleachers and you're in with Linn, I'm just being facetious,
Yeah.
but people do ask me a lot, why can't we have bleachers at Volunteers Green? And the answer is, it's because it's a structure and we can, but if we could just kind of keep that in mind, when you're watching your grandson play softball, probably nice to have a place to sit.
Yes. Well, I even thinking of benches and thinking like the one at the round church that was donated, I would think that perhaps, a bocce group would put on a bench, or maybe, I think we could find other ways. I guess task or question was just like, should we include a few benches in our overall plan? Should we include a table in our overall plan? Is that something that we put down the road, that's, something later? So those are my questions. A bike rack. Do we want a bike rack now? Does that, should it be included in the plan? Maybe it's
I
something
feel
that gets cut out, but we could.
Personally, I think we put all of it into the numbers that we're talking about when we go into that next meeting. And then these are the pieces that we sort of then say, okay, total number, obviously, that if we're even just being realistic here in what we've seen for numbers, we're not gonna be able to do everything, and so those are the pieces that then we can have the numbers for whomever is interested, if they're interested in doing those later. But I think we put them in there and then we sort of divide them out as, okay, not right now, leaving these behind, these are what we are left with, that kind of thing. So I will put the numbers in that you've said, and then we can, as we go through the process of solidifying an overall budget, certain things will kind of come out of that.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Is that fair for everyone? Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Yep.
I think that ends our Browns Court discussion, unless anybody had open comment or public comment on Browns Court. Anybody on the phone?
Can I put Jay on the spot for a minute?
Sure.
So everyone who's on for Brown's Court right now, there's a select board meeting on Tuesday after Martin Luther King. On the agenda is Brown's Court discussion. Jay, do you have, are we hoping for a motion?
Okay,
Do we know?
I'll come up with the table second.
Thank you. Jay's gonna update us on what the select board is gonna do,
Well,
or what we
put
hope.
it this way, the select board cannot meet about this outside the warrant meeting of the select board.
Right.
So what I'm about to say is a sense of what I felt to people at the last meeting. I would say that there is essentially zero chance of us telling the committee, do all this work, and now we're gonna do housing instead. I don't know a single member of the select board who wants that. I think that there are a couple people who want to do due diligence on discussing housing before we slam the door. And I think the way we're thinking about doing that is to have it discussed at town meeting day. Because that's the biggest forum that involves the most people, to just once and for all say, what do people think? But barring this huge groundswell of people coming out of nowhere to say, we want housing, the hell with this recreation stuff, I think that's gonna close the door once and for all. I was wrong at the select board meeting when I said that, the chair can't make a motion. Would one of you please make a motion? The chair can make motions. It's just not commonly done. Because the chair, but I checked, and there's not, the Vermont state law says that the select board chair has the same rights as any other member and make motions. So I was trying to think of a way to draft the motion to say that it is the sense of the Richmond Select Board that this is me paraphrasing something I wrote down earlier. It is the sense of the Richmond Select Board that the Parks Committee be directed to continue with all due speed plans for Brown's Court to be used for recreational purposes. Just to basically put it in writing that we're telling you to do this. And then as far as saying we will never again contemplate doing housing, I don't think we're going to anyway. But I think that's going to be where people would say, do we really want to slam the door before we could talk to people in town meeting day? That's kind of the sense I'm getting, but it's not formal. I have not said, can I quote you on that? Because again, we can't formally meet about this until the next time. We've talked off and on about a housing summit, and then no one really knows, has any sense of what that would be. And so I think that having it as an article on the town meeting, not ballot, but the town meeting agenda, I think that's our housing summit. Just get it out there for once and for all. And unless there's just people stamping their feet and demanding housing, it's one of those things that we kick the can down the road. And the reason I say that in part is because we have a clock ticking, and the clock is not ticking on getting housing in. We need housing yesterday, we'll need housing tomorrow, we'll need housing next month, next year, but we have $450,000 we have to allocate. And that has to happen by December 31st, it just has to. And if we say, no, we're gonna put housing there, where the heck are we gonna spend that money? So speaking only as 20% of the select board, I'm not gonna vote to put housing up there.
Thank you.
I mean, it makes no sense at this point, because Keith O'Warren's, we said just back of the envelope, can we put housing there? And he said, well, if we go with a restriction that we keep the softball field, we could shove 20 units in this corner, they'd be 500 square feet each. A 500 square foot studio is not suitable for anything more than one person. That's not really going to make a big dent in the housing deficit. One of the biggest concerns I have about saying putting housing there is parking, because we would have to put 30 spaces in, 1.5 spaces per unit, whether they're studios or not, that's the law. And then what's going to happen is somebody comes home tired from work at 5:30 on a Thursday afternoon and gets there and can't park with their car full of groceries because the entire parking lot is full of people watching their grandchildren play softball. There's absolutely nothing we could do to prevent that. I just don't think that that's reasonable or even sane to try to mix those uses. Whereas the recreational uses, I think we need these recreational uses. There's far too little for people who are retired to do just looking at that population alone. I'm hoping that we still can maybe put a trail in around Volunteers Green, but as far as Brown's Court goes, I like what I'm hearing. The only question that I really got is I like the idea of the multi-use court if it can be done, but then the question that came up is if we've got one tennis court up there, how do we control access to that? How do we say, well, you get it from 10 to 11, you get it from 11, who's gonna take on that job? I don't see any way to do that. And that's one tennis court, or it could be 4 pickleball courts. I wish we could get a basketball court in there too. I will say that. I don't know if that's going to be possible, because putting in basketball, you'd be telling the pickleball players to take down the whole court every day when they leave.
Right.
It's just.
And the thing we've discussed at other meetings too is we've gotten quotes for the multi-use courts as well, and they're substantially more expensive for the same footprint, and it would really limit our ability to do much of anything else, especially if we end up doing anything with a playground. That's our entire.
Yeah, it sounds like such a great idea. We'll have a multi-use court, so we can have tennis, pickleball, and basketball. But when you actually get down to brass tacks, I don't see it working.
Yeah, we don't have a recreation manager.
I also have some concerns that there aren't any public courts in Vermont that are multi-use. I think there are some private ones. And I think that's the exact reason.
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Marshall, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.
The thing.
Thank you.
So I know that on the recreation survey, the ARPA survey, basketball was way high. Tennis was, I think, the number one recreational request of them all. I wish there was a way we could do that. Because I get emails just out of the blue. I've been on the board for 3 years. It's not like I've been there forever, but I've gotten a lot of emails saying, why can't we have tennis? Why do we have to drive all the way to such and such to play tennis? Well, we've got a flood zone. There are things that limit what we can do. In terms of what recreational requests are actually practical, I think pickleball is up there.
Right.
We also got a lot of requests for a gym, for a recreation center. I'm like, you just heard how much it would cost to do a bench. A recreation center with pools and indoor basketball courts. I hope you have $30 million sitting in your back pocket, because that's what it would take. And so the thing I like about the plan you've done is it's practical.
Thank you.
It's practical. It represents what we can do with the space available and reflects what the citizens of our town asked for in the ARPA survey as much as we can. We can't do everything that was asked for. But I still would like to see a trailer on Volunteer Screen. But that's not.
Thank you.
Jay, at the next select board meeting, would it be okay if I spoke about like statistics leading towards pickleball being the best?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this, I'm gonna hide, I'm gonna be in Buffalo that night, but I will be joining the call remotely.
But if they're just gonna be talking a motion about telling us to go ahead, I think your statistics would be more important
it will help.
when we come with a real
Right.
proposal.
Yeah, and I think this is gonna be all over as a town meeting day, because I think that we're gonna go through the motions of having a discussion. We might hear stuff that's very much worth listening to a town meeting. I mean, it is the biggest, it's most democratic part of our town government system. Anybody can show up, anybody can speak. But unless somebody comes up with something that absolutely wows us, I don't see any reason to say the possibility of housing in 3 years is much more valuable than the reality of recreation this year. I mean, if we worked with Cathedral Square or Champlain Housing Trust or what's Evernorth, how soon do you think housing would even be in there? Best case, 4 years, 5 years?
5 years.
Long time.
Because we'd have to go to the voters again to get permission to give the land to the entity.
Yeah. So my take as 20% of the select board is, we're not gonna pull the rug out from under you. I love the work you've done.
Thank you.
I had no reason to doubt you, but I'm actually really impressed by how much has gone into this. Because let's face it, everybody's volunteers. Sometimes people would take on a volunteer assignment and they get together and talk about their grandkids and share photos of their cats, and they don't actually do anything. You guys have been the pleasant exception to that. I'm really grateful for all the work you've done.
We appreciate your comments last Monday.
Thank you.
We really appreciate, and we appreciate your comments tonight.
Well, it's not, for me, it comes down to, it's not an empty thing to say we need more recreation. Because my parents are both deceased, but one of the things that affected their health a lot was they never went outside, they never did anything. They just sat around all day and read. And that leads to osteoporosis, it leads to a lot of health problems. Having a place where people can go to do things that are available to anybody, bocce, pickleball, even just walking, is a tangible benefit to the health of our citizens in a way that I love the Richmond Free Library, but there's only so much you can do there. I mean, this is something that can have a net impact on people's health.
Great. Any questions while Jay's at the table?
I'm kind of curious, have you heard from the neighbors who just walked out about the concerns about noise? That's the biggest thing that people mention to me is, I know you've
The
got
pickleball court?
Yeah, I know
The only
you've got the
person
idea of
we've
the
heard
cedar
from
screening.
is Melissa Wooliver. That's the only person we've heard from.
She doesn't live there.
No, she
Yeah,
lives in
does.
Tilden.
Right, she lives in Tilden, but
She was
she
the only one to
sent,
express concern.
and then we told her that, Fran had a great idea of putting the cedars in to
Or
help
some
buff.
other form of.
And somebody last night on Burnett Court said to me, she goes, I would love to hear that. She goes, I love hearing the kids from the elementary school. She goes, I love hearing those noise. I love to hear when the kids are on the softball field.
Okay.
So that was good.
Denise,
Yes.
about the noise,
Mhm.
I have listened to people playing pickleball. I could get tired of that real quick. But I'd rather hear that than among other things. I would ask that you consider, don't even commit to it at all. If you're going to put cedars on one end of that bocce or that pickleball, put it on the other end, so people on sport are also sheltered. But I think the priority is the network, because they're a lot closer.
Right,
I
right.
know nothing about arboriculture. Is this a case where you buy grown trees and put them in, or are we talking?
Yeah,
That's
Okay.
Fran's Avenue.
yeah, you know, I've just been doing research and there's one company I've got to contact, but you know, for like $50, you can get a 6-foot. Cedars are not that expensive.
I did not know that.
And we'd either have to plant them or get somebody to plant. You know, I haven't explored it as much as I need to, but they're one of the more expensive, inexpensive hedges that you can.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go back in the corner because this is not my meeting.
Thank you.
But I
Well, we
think
appreciate
we'll
it.
work with them.
So I think the next piece, and then, you know, in the interest of time and cutting off, I think we wanna go over, Fran sent over, Pete wanted to be a part of this meeting to talk about the volunteers free.
He was on. Did he get
Was he
called
on?
out? Pete, did you get called out? Oh, he's here.
I've been out all night.
Oh, how is it out there?
Not good, not good, but very poor visibility, and it's starting to change to a mix of rain and sleet now, so. But there's not many people out, so that's good.
When we get home?
You got all-wheel drive, right?
Yep.
I just went up your road. I made it fine, so. The biggest thing is visibility is just horrible.
So Fran, do you want to introduce this part or
Well, sure.
Pete or?
I stopped, well, first of all, after the second flood, I was just totally distressed, by seeing particularly the playground area and having, seeing all the work that Pete had done undone and the time that they had to spend to get a semblance of a playground, back in order. So I stopped one day to talk to Pete when he was out working, and and we discussed briefly the idea of, do we want to spend $200,000 and put a playground down where it's going to get flooded and, going to be damaged every time it floods? And Pete shared with me his thoughts about moving the playground up to the plateau and dealing with the band shell and trees. And I thought in my mind that was worth pursuing. So he did send out a memo tonight with his ideas, but it would be best if Pete, maybe you could just highlight what your thoughts are.
Okay, here we go. So I want to say is we've lost that playground twice in 6 months. We lost it at Irene. I think it's probably been since I've worked for the town of Richmond, at least 6 times we've had that floodway, you know, that playground taken out, including the ball fields and everything. I just can't justify anybody building something right back in that floodway. I think we're poorly spending the town's money. We know this problem exists. It's not going to go away. Storms have changed. I mean, they're more frequent now. So I truly believe that playground, if we're going to invest 200 grand into something, and we have this ARPA funds, moving it to higher ground or a different location is the best thing to do for it. So I went up to the plateau up there, and I did some survey work, and I did some measuring, and the usable portion of that plateau measures 100 feet in width, meaning from the river to the parking lot, and 150 feet in length from Bridge Street to the Volunteers Green Fields. And that's all flat usable land. Some of the obstructions that are in the way there's like 4 or 5 crabapple trees that are all overgrown. There's a Ladin Sack Memorial that's kind of really just kind of not been maintained very well. There's some old decrepit benches that really should be removed. So anyways, my proposal is 2 parts. And I'm just going to throw it out there because I think it's 2 birds with 1 stone. I honestly feel, because I've done the maintenance in that park for 29 years, I've done all the road rebuilding, did the parking lots, I've done all the roofs, done all the maintenance in the concession stand. I've been a vital part of making that place work. I think it's time for the town to install a pavilion with an ADA handicap accessible bathrooms. I think it's really needed in that end of the Volunteers Green, the amount of activity that goes on there. So I was thinking like a 50 by 30 pavilion with a bathroom, handicap, male, female bathroom assembly inside in the center of it. Also could be open around it with picnic tables or whatnot. And then removal of the band shell completely and installing the new playground in that location. Doing the measuring, it looks like there'll be about 40 feet of green space between the two areas, allowing for concerts to still happen, being played out of the pavilion, families being able to picnic under cover now. Kids' activities can happen kind of under a roof versus just in that little band shell area. Let's face it, the band shell has only got a 50% roof on it. It's got a negative pitch floor. It faces the road. It only serves a few purposes. It really does. I think a pavilion will serve a lot more purposes. There's water, sewer, and electricity already on that plateau, and fire hydrant. And as part of this, also, we relocated the picnic benches up along that top level when the tree planting went in, and that nice aesthetic view of the river, the Winooski River. It's kind of nice. So it kind of all goes together right there, in my mind. I also believe that a lot of those trees that are on that embankment that leads between the band shell and the field, they're overcrowded. We cannot get grass to grow. The root system's out of the ground. I think a fair amount of those need to be removed and thinned out and pruned out and open that green space all the way down through. There'll still be shade trees left. We could relocate the 4 benches that are the composite benches that are around the playground now. They could be relocated up to the new playground. Also, I got a donation about 4 years ago from Ben and Jerry's from interlocking rubber mat system. And in talking with Justin Mansfield from Rainbow Play Equipment, Pettinelli Associates, he says it's not quite enough to do the whole playground. But as we were talking about it, we come up with another idea about using it as around the perimeter of the playground, meaning like if you had like 8 or 10 foot wide rubber mat system around the whole playground with the mulch inside of it, you'd have nice delineation between the green grass and the mulch, keep it cleaner. We'd also be able to use the mats. It'd be more comfortable for people to sit on, or walk on. That would be a good use of the mat system. The hurdle or the problem is that plateau is located right in a special flood hazard overlay. So it's going to require an engineer or an architect to go in there and do elevations on this and see if we could apply for a letter of map amendment to get this thing removed from that flood hazard overlay, get it to a certain elevation that will allow us to build a structure in there. That's the big what if. But at any point, I really do not feel installing a new playground in the exact location where it's at now is feasible. Second alternative to any of this.
Hey, can I stop you just for one
Sure.
sec? So, after Fran met with you, she had sent me an email because Josh was at the meeting, I guess Keith Oborn and.
Pete wasn't at.
Oh, okay, so anyway, Fran called me and said, could Chris Hagerty possibly look at the plateau and do topos and a survey? So I said, sure, I'll call for Josh. So I called Chris Hagerty and he said, oh, that'll be easy because he was the surveyor that did the surveys after Irene.
Oh, nice.
So he's gonna do it all again, but he said most of it's already done. He's gonna do it again. And he's not sure, but he said he'll have it done soon because he had already done it for when we got flooded with Irene.
That's great. That's great.
So he's working on it right now. So he may call you if he has questions.
Sure.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to give them your contact information.
Absolutely, give it to them.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. I had some emails going back and forth with Fran, and she did tell me that, so that's great. And the area where the playground currently is, turning that back to green space now allows for the farmers market to be used to be, housed down there, easy access. They'll have bathrooms now to walk up to. Be better for the 4th of July events, any community events or activities that would go on. You got that extra space, so it's kind of a win-win. You're using that space under good weather conditions versus putting a structure in there in bad conditions that eventually are going to take it away. The other alternative I've come up with, because we're pretty limited on town-owned property, would be obviously probably the cheapest way out would be to build a new playground in the green space at the library, behind the library. The downfall of that is it's going to probably bring a lot of extra traffic into the parking lot, which will take away from the town center and the library, which may have a little bit of a conflict with stuff going on in those buildings. That's doable. That's slightly out of the flood hazard overlay. That back section, I believe, is out of it. And Keith and Tyler thought that would be a fairly easy thing to do. And I know the whole town center campus is under review for overhaul or rehab and whatnot. It also got brought up about moving this playground to Brown's Court. Obviously, the proposals tonight were great. Didn't show anything like that. Richmond Elementary School has a brand new playground just around the corner, and that's for public use also. So that's just kind of out of the village area. Most of the daycares and stuff, they bring their kids into the center of the village. It's just, that's where I see the activity really wanting to happen. It's happened for years. The play care kids come down, families get together, high school kids, congregate down here. It's just a great spot in the center of the village. So I just wanted to throw that idea out there, and I think it's great. It sounds like people think that's a wise choice to relocate the existing playground. I'm not so sure how the band shell removal and installing a pavilion is going to be taken by people. But I'm looking forward. Let's look forward for 50 years, look at the activities that's going on down there. I mean, that place is busy. It's very, very busy. Up a restaurant on one side of the parking lot. We paved and cleaned up the parking lot and line striped it. It's very organized now. The traffic flows so much better. I think it's time to, go next step, and we're using ARPA money, and we're actually looking at investing into this parcel. So that's my opinion anyways. I'm not everybody, but I'm just trying to think of the best use of the property that's there. So
Pete, how many hours do you think on this last December 18th storm, how many hours do you think you did with your crew putting it back together?
We had a full week down here. We had 40 hours with the whole crew. And just so you know, this is a number I can give you. The playground mulch is an engineered fiber carpet. So it's what do you want to call it? It's pure wood chips. Okay. It has a spring factor to it. It has to be engineered, certified. It's $3,800. They just cost us $3,800 to put that carpet back under it. And that's us doing the work. That's the raw cost of it. So we also had that same expense, back in July, after July. So just that one item alone, there's $7,000, almost $8,000 just washed away. So it's just, to me, it just doesn't make sense. Why would we think that it'd be wise to put that right back in that floodway? I just don't see it.
Pete, would you be willing to answer some questions?
Sure.
Jeannie had her hand up, Jeannie Agner.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Hi, Pete. I've been looking into the playgrounds, and I've met with Justin and several other people, and I agree with you 100%. When that last flood happened, I thought, why should we even, bother to put it together? Is it just time to demolish it now? And then walking around, I walked around 2 different days just to say, oh my goodness, look at that damage there. And just didn't know what an alternative might be. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think a playground should go there either. I'm totally with you there. Wherever it goes.
All the flooding damage that we've had over the years, I have never seen the flagpole and the facade get literally washed away. Every single thing that was concrete down there was tipped over. This flood event had more force in the water than any of the last 4 or 5. I don't understand what was so different about this, but it took 20 cubic yards to fill the hole in where the facade, the Volunteers Green facade was in the flagpole. Just that one hole took that many cubic yards of material. It was an amazing amount of force. And like I say, put something brand new back in there. We're just waiting to do it again. You know, it's just, I don't think it'd be wise way to spend the town's ARPA money right there, putting it right back there.
Mm-hmm. And kudos to you for how well you did pull it together, though. I'm really impressed.
But we got right on it, and the concession stand, again, it got a foot of silt in it. The only good thing was we had some warm temperatures, so we were able to get down there with pressure washers and get the silt out. But all the facilities in there are ruined. The toilets or structures are all ruined. The power service is ruined. The water heater's ruined. Basically, just the shell of the building is what is good. The electrical is all going to have to be upgraded. We knew this from the July flood, but it got hit again. So, and that's a building that I guess we're just going to live with because it's there. Again, that one is in the flood area. We know it. But let's not make that mistake again. Let's move it up to higher ground.
So Pete, I have a question. I was talking to a female official today for the state of Vermont, who happens to be a friend, and he said that is it going to be classified as just a flood, or is it going to have this storm, the December 18th, going to have classification?
We haven't met the threshold yet, so I don't believe we're going to get a disaster claim from this one. I think this one's going to be on the town. That's why, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're not involved.
I haven't heard of anything yet. They're trying to put numbers together, but they would have had them by now. And it's got the threshold's pretty high now for FEMA claims. And this was very isolated. This storm was more valley flooding. So I don't know. I haven't heard of anything.
Has to be the county, isn't it?
There is a county threshold, like $1 to use or something. I forget the number of what we haven't gotten that.
Like $5 million or something like that. It's
oh wow.
It's quite a bit.
Any other questions for Pete while we have him?
Mary?
Hey, Pete.
Hey, how are you, Mary?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
You probably don't have an exact number, but I'm just wondering, like, even if you just broke it down over the last 5 years, how much money do you think the town of Richmond has spent trying to, repair the playground, redo it after every single weather event that we've had?
That's a tough one.
Because I agree with you. I mean, we have this money, and I agree. It seems like a poor choice to put a new playground in an area that, just consistently is problematic and is going to keep flooding. I feel like we're going to really waste our money. So I just didn't know if you had any sort of number for over the last several years.
Well, the fortunate thing is that, we do it with the town labor and town equipment, which we already own. But if you had to put the value to that, you can figure, it pretty easily be $10,000 per week just for the equipment and manpower plus materials. So, this last event, we spent a week plus materials. The July event, we spent a lot more than a week. We spent, I think that was over 2 weeks on that one. And we're not done. We got to go back in the spring. The green space has got silt about 4 inches thick from the canoe access extending all the way down to field 2. And that has to be thinned down to like less than an inch so the grass will come back through. We got the heaviest off. We took 5 truckloads out of this last storm. But we're gonna go back and remove that in the spring. We've got topsoil work to do. We got work at the sidewalks where it undermined the sidewalks. It carved underneath, so we've got more work to do back there. So it could easily be a $15,000 repair when we're done, pretty easily. And that's being pretty late with the numbers. If you were to contract it, you could double that number pretty easily.
All right.
Molly Hall. Oh, I'm sorry, Molly, did you have a question?
I did. I had a couple questions. One, I think, well, more of a comment first. I think the idea of raising or having the playground on a higher ground is definitely appealing. I've lived here for almost 6 years, and yeah, it's flooded 3 times since I've been here. And so, I have 2 young kids. A couple of concerns that I have with, one with the current playground, the structural integrity of it continuing to flood, is concerning. I appreciate that you did fix that slide that had a crack, because I noticed that and over the summer. And but having it move up to higher ground, it is closer to the road up there, and so just with young kids running around, I would, if that was a possibility, I would love to see some fencing to try and just keep kids, making sure that they're not potentially running into the road, and also the river right behind it too. And also I would love to see a playground for that the whole town can potentially use, that meaning having it be ADA compliant, because our current playground is not, and it's too bad, because we do have a number of kids who I think would really appreciate a playground that they can use also, not just the school playground, which is much more accessible now, which has been great. And also a bathroom closer, to not have to schlep my kids all the way to the back of the park anytime they have to go to the bathroom. That would be really nice. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, no, you're
Thank
welcome.
you, Molly.
My proposal was to place the pavilion near the Bridge Street side. And then the green space would be between the pavilion and where the band shell now is, where the playground would actually be. So you'd almost, in essence, be almost the same setback from Bridge Street as we are currently. You'd just be near the river. That'd be the one thing, but there would be a space obviously between the playground and the river. But again, a more very detailed proposal or design would be great. But what I wanted to tell you, everybody, is I do feel 100 by 150 space that we have up there, usable space, is adequate to put these two things in. Right now, the playground takes up about a 60-foot diameter, and I believe we're looking at the same size playground.
Yes.
Dimension, and it can be, it can be shifted around and interlocked in a way where it could be slightly smaller, and still have the same number of units in it. But when I talked to Justin Mansfield of Pettinelli, he was telling me that we were going to go with basically the same size of what we have currently, just a more condensed version, and obviously new stuff. So I think it's doable. It's doable. And the last piece, which I never brought up, was the walking path. And I did talk to Fran about that, and I really feel it should be paved, and I feel it should be installed at field grade, meaning it's not elevated above the field. It's at the field grade. And the reason for that is anything that's got a protrusion above the finished grade of ground, if water floods over, it wants to create a whirlpool effect or a waterfall effect on the backside, and it creates an undermining, and it actually wants to wash stuff out. Something that's flush and flat with the flat grade, water will just pile up and just smooth right over it. So I think for erosion factors, a paved walkway would be the best. We can maintain it year round. We have sidewalk equipment that will plow and salt 5 feet wide. And I do feel it shouldn't be any bigger than 6 feet in width. If we go 8 or 10, we're going to invite vehicles, which we definitely don't want cars racing around there. We don't want to be plowing it with a full-size vehicle either. And given the amount of space and green space that we're gonna use up putting a path in, I don't think you want a real big path. I mean, 4,000 feet all the way around is a nice walking area. I think it'll be used by a lot of people. I really do.
May I?
Any questions?
Yeah.
Adjourn from south, please.
John Gart.
Hi, John.
Okay. So, I guess first off, well, paving one is gonna add impervious surface in the floodplain. And there's some prohibitions against that. I don't know at what extent that gets triggered. The other being, I know like the first part of the access road to the park lost a couple inches of its top during this last rain event. That was as packed as anything's gonna get, and that was at grade.
No, it wasn't that great, John. The sidewalk is elevated above it in the curb. So the water jumped over the curb, started the waterfall effect, washing under the concrete sidewalk, and then going downhill with this waterfalling effect going into the uphill side of the asphalt, and it migrated under it. Had all that been at one level grade, it would have just flowed straight across it. It's not. So what we need to do there, what I want to do this spring, is actually put in a solid surface between the curb and the asphalt parking lot. So anything that washes over can't undermine. Meaning we do it with asphalt or we pour concrete there.
That part
we literally lost an 8-foot or 10-foot long piece of asphalt by 3 feet wide. If that was a gravel parking lot like it has been for the last 60 plus years, that whole parking lot would have been out in that green out there. And I've many times retrieved it. So
so that part I get. I'm sorry, I think I explained myself properly. I'm thinking that at the west end of the parking area, where the pizza place comes out, that stretch of the access road going into the rest of the park, that part lost a couple inches of its surface. That part of that little access road. From all
the gravel did, yes.
So yeah, that was at grade, and that was as packed as anything short of paving.
Right.
So to me, my view, my observation of it is that floodwaters like we had last time, it's gonna erode whatever you put there at grade that's not rooted into the ground.
Correct, yes.
And so I guess I'm really concerned about the idea of putting any sort of path in there that's gonna one, create more impermeable surface, and two, create any sort of surface that's gonna cause water flow to change, that's gonna cause that, like you sort of said, turbidity or water churning that's gonna start eating up soil, it's gonna start eating under the edges of pathways, and it's gonna cause more erosion.
So a couple things that added to that factor of that spot washing out you're talking about is we have curbs. We have curbs coming down from the bridge and curbs coming from Esplanade Street with an opening. The opening lines up with that roadway. So now you're taking this water and you're creating more force into this one opening. And what is at the end of that asphalt? Gravel. And that's exactly where the highest erosion force was in that water. So a lot of these things have a factor to it. But I'm saying out in the open field, if it's at grade, we didn't have a single scour out in that green area. Nothing. We had silt.
Well, there are a whole bunch of places out there. There are a whole
Well,
bunch of.
we're talking very minor silt type stuff, but we didn't like lose like where the facade was or the flagpole. We didn't have that kind of damage out there.
No, I mean, during the July flood, you had a 3-foot trench between third base and home plate.
Because they were already depressed from the base.
But that was pretty well packed. And then, yeah, throughout the green, there were a whole bunch of places where hunks of sod were eaten up and washed away. So I guess I'm particularly concerned about putting any sort of path, particularly a paved path there that could potentially increase the rate of erosion around it, even if that path itself may stay stable.
Well, that's a discussion, I guess, for a later date. I mean, if, you know, we want to get to that. I know it got brought up. It would, in my mind, it would be really good use of that parcel. We take best advantage of what we have, that resource for everyone. So, but again, that pros, cons can be kicked around. I'd rather lose, you know, 20, 30 feet of a path than lose $200,000 playground structure.
I'm totally with you there, and I'm totally with you the idea of trying to make, make the most of the park. I just think we gotta pull in a few extra folks that have some more expertise in hydrology.
Oh, absolutely.
Expect of the river, get their input, because we lost so much more riverbank. The trees that I hoped would provide more of a protection against extra flooding. I was hoping they'd have another 5 or 10 years to grow before they became the last bit of protection between the river and the ball fields, and now we lost some of that. So, I guess the placement of any path is gonna be important, and the ability to get some more trees growing fast is gonna be important.
All right, thank you, John. Molly, I just want to touch base with you real quick before we go to Mary's question. I loved your ADA concerns, and please know that we've been working on that. The expert on the committee for the playground is Jeannie Agner. I would highly recommend you touch base with her. She's got plans she can show you. And that is one of our first and foremost concerns, as well as either a band shell being handicap accessible and or a pavilion. Mary, we're gonna go on to you.
Oh, thanks. I just want to make sure I understood, Pete. So if the path was concrete, cement, which is obviously very different than gravel, and it's at grade, you feel that would be successful? It's not going to create any sort of waterfall effect with erosion going underneath it? I mean, the water is just going to kind of run right over it and everything would be fine. That's what I thought I understood you to say.
Well, I was proposing the path to be asphalt, not concrete, because concrete would be.
Or asphalt, yeah.
Asphalt. It'll be very minimal erosion. It's as long as it doesn't have, if it has a nice flat grade to spread out on, it's not gonna have that erosion force. As soon as there's any kind of bump or something in its way, it'll start that waterfall effect and create a massive erosion on the backside of it. I'm not saying it will never wash out. I'm never gonna say that in the Valley of Richmond ever. Right. I've seen way too much of that. Everybody's seen all the roads and everything that got taken out this year. But personally speaking, if you put a gravel pathway in there, I can tell you within 3 to 5 years, it'll be mostly grass growing back through it. You won't have a nice defined path. And it'll be hard in the winter months, obviously, to clear it, because if it between freezes and thaws, we're going to either tear it all up with a plow or we're going to make a bigger problem out of it. So having a hard surface will be better for year-round maintenance. And I think people are going to want to use something like that in the winter months. Keep them off the roads, be safer for motorists.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to come back.
Can you introduce yourself?
Jesse Kaiser. And I just wanted to come back and looking at time and not where you are, but since public comment didn't happen, I would like to have an opportunity to do that. I mean, as many of you know from past comments at the meetings here and for ARPA, and care about and I'm concerned and interested in community engagement with the parks. And I'm hoping you would describe your plans for conducting public outreach and collecting public feedback.
Are you ready now?
Sure.
Okay, so we've just discussed it at, what did we discuss that? Last meeting. So we had talked about having, the presentation the same time. I don't know if you know, we've applied for a grant for the playground. And one of the stipulations of the grant was to do public outreach as well. So we thought, because there were people who were coming in for recreation, we would also piggyback onto that public outreach and do the presentation of the Browns Court, Volunteers Green, and the green at the Old Round Church. Just what the plans are and get people's thoughts.
No dates yet.
Oh,
The
we don't have
proposed
dates.
timeframe was sometime in February potentially. We still are not prepared to, you know, present
No.
ideas. As you see, we're kind of rethinking how we're even gonna have volunteer screening look. And so we wanna be able to have it be a productive conversation.
As the select board chair stated earlier, and I think you were in the room, all the money has to be,
Allocated.
I'm sorry.
Allocated.
Allocated by December 31st, 2024. So that's our deadline. But all this stuff, I mean, it's hopefully be way before then, but all of the information gathering that we're doing now, we're just not prepared at this time to go forward with public outreach until we know for sure what we're gonna do. We still need to, as per John Cart's request, we need to meet with, I think, last meeting you said hydrologist? No.
You should meet with folks from DEC, Rivers.
Right, so there's so much
Stormwater.
more research we have to do before the public outreach even takes place.
I think we would be going park by park at this point.
And then we
Yeah.
had talked as a committee going park, Brown River being our first objective, and maybe Old Round Church being second, because there's not, I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, there's not much.
There's not, I mean, it's not much to do over there to get that taken care of. And that's gonna be an easy fix, because we know we're not gonna put recreation over there.
But Volunteers Green just, in my mind, it just got pushed out more.
I agree.
I'm personally still, would like to pursue the idea of a path, and I was told by Tyler not to talk to anybody at the state yet until we propose something to him. He said it starts with him. He told me that about 5 times, so I have to start.
Oh, I didn't know that.
With Tyler,
That's interesting.
But
we do plan to do public outreach, and we will let you know as soon as we have enough information to do that public outreach.
And our meetings are
Public
where
outreach.
there, the agenda is there several times in, the front porch forum.
This goes up for a subsequent viewing.
So if people are paying attention, they can, we didn't have this idea of Zoom, 5 years ago, but now we have it and people are using it, and they should know that.
We're meeting every 2 weeks. We've been meeting every 2 weeks.
I'd like to personally,
Sure.
One of the things that I get a fair bit of comments on is gratitude from people who see me trying to sum up complicated issues with post-front forum. I do good, better sometimes than others. But when you sitting through a 2-hour meeting to make sure you didn't miss anything is not an option everybody really feels comfortable with. It's not a bad idea after something like this to just, kind of post a very condensed version of the minutes and say, here's what we discussed. Just to put this in people's radar, and then if they want to know more, then they know they can go watch the video. That's actually worked pretty well in other areas, just to let people know we are talking about this, and you don't have to depend on people reading through the agenda and going, oh. I want to, while I've got the floor, mention that one of the reasons I keep coming back to the path is because on the ARPA survey, there were a very, very large number of people requesting alternate means of locomoting along Concord Road, like a trail, a separated area, a path that was parallel to. The fact is, we don't have room for it. There's no way we can put a path the entire length of Concord Road. But people don't want to walk on Concord Road because they don't want to get mown down. And that's why I keep coming back to wanting a path around Volunteer Greens so badly, because it's the only place we can satisfy that need that's, well, I guess we could put that on Brown's Court, but the point is, that's essential. And the reason I would like to see it paved is can be brought down to one word: strollers. You can't really push a baby on gravel very well. I'm sure more people know than I do.
Let's go for a walk after the day.
I did walk the path. I did walk the green last week. And I walked first the woodland path and saw the erosion. But then, in my mind, you put the path away from there. We
To
put
the
it
right
on the
trees.
perimeter of the grass. And I did not see, I saw silt, but I did not see any erosion or around there.
It was just paved quick smooth, but I'll say, again, a path, you're right, as Pete said, would have water flowing smoothly, wouldn't create turbulence until it hit the rest of the green, which is not smooth, which is gonna erode other parts of the green. And if we want volunteers green to be around the path, we need to do something that won't erode volunteers green.
Yeah.
I don't understand the hydrology of what you're saying.
Just walk out there with your.
Okay. Any other questions? We're gonna wrap up
Yeah, we
just
got-
in the essence of bad roads. And Pete will get them home safely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. A motion,
To adjourn? Yes, I move we adjourn.
second?
I second.
All those in favor of adjourning this evening, signify by saying aye.
I.
All those opposed? Thank you all so much for listening and for your input. We appreciate it.
Careful driving home.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We will.